There's my face. There's my face. All right, welcome everybody. I want to thank you for coming out today to listening to our guest speaker. I want to introduce the CEO of Avalon, Mr. Sean Pinnock.
Hello, everybody. So first and foremost, thank you all for having me. It's a pleasure coming here and doing this. It's actually been a while since I've done a school presentation. I think the last one I did was at UCF about 3 years ago. And ironically, the presentation you're going to see today is actually that one. But I edited it a bit for you all, just a little bit. I guess with that being said, we can hop right into it. So for starters, I'm going to, the purpose of this presentation today is really, it's not very long, but I really want to inspire you all to show that, firstly, if you're interested in being an entrepreneur, building your own game studio, or whatever it is you want to do in life, this should inspire you that, hey, if I can do this, going through what I went through, I think you should be able to too. And I'll show you a lot of that here today. And then secondly, even if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, you want to work and pick your game studio, I don't care how good your art is, how good your code is, how great of a designer you are right now. If you put in the work, you too can do that as well one day. So let's go through and into this, and I'll jump through it a bit. But firstly, who am I? I'll give you the very quick introduction, and then you'll get to really know me throughout the rest of this presentation. But obviously, Sean Pinnock, CEO here at Avalon. It wasn't that long ago. I was sitting right where you are. UCF graduate from 2014. Way before then, though, I started making games. I was a modder on Warcraft and StarCraft. I modded a lot of OG games back then. A lot of them you haven't heard of. Some of them you might have. Like I worked on like a spin-off of Dota and a lot of other games. Kept making indie games through college. Actually founded game dev nights, and let's just go right into it, and I'll just show you the journey. So, yeah, I founded game dev nights in 2013. I didn't know what code was. I actually failed. Let me see if I go to the next slide. Yeah, I didn't know what code was. This is when I first was at UCF. I literally thought when you open up if you open up like a CS file, and it looks like that, I literally thought that was code. And that was in college, right? And I had no idea what I was doing. I failed my computer science class. It was rough. But, I love video games. I said, I love ranking things. I've been modding games on Warcraft, right? But I wasn't writing code. I was just using their kind of visual editor. And, I made my first real game. I spent a summer, I actually got an internship. I think it was E2I, Creative Studios, if you guys have heard of it. I'm not sure how I got an internship, but somehow I did. And I spent all of my time, 100% of my time in an internship, and all my free time just making video games. And all of a sudden, 6 months later, I aced my CS class. I'm creating all these awesome games. Well, I say awesome. Can somebody click on that YouTube link for me? This is the first game I made, and I was super, super proud of it. It's called Sky Kittens. Although all my variables were static, I was doing tons of things wrong if you're a programmer. So if we can go back to the slide. No worries. So started game dev night, started making tons of indie games, tons of game jams, just making games. I loved making games, doing it with my friends, working on my mom's basement. Kept doing that, and I was about to graduate college. And I started getting, I don't want to say good at programming, but, I thought I was good. As well as other things. And I really wanted to work at Blizzard. It was my dream. Blizzard or Riot, one of those top companies, at least at the time, that's what I thought they were. And I was interviewing with them at the time. Super excited. like, hey, I might actually get in. Went to GDC, did all the things. And my buddy and I, PJ and Peter, still two of my best friends, we were working on a game called Black Sea Odyssey. And it was an indie game. It was like a 2D top-down shooter. And we ended up presenting it at the Global Game Jam. Do you mind playing that top video, please? Working on this game,
A vast chasm exists between space and time. Here, the greatest huntsman in the universe is decided. Every decade, the competition returns. 4 challengers embark on a journey deep into the abyss. Let the Black Sea Odyssey begin!
It's actually, there's somebody right now who's modding it for Xbox, and they're going to try and put multiplayer on it just because they love the game, which is super random. The game was shipped in like 2016. Yeah, so let's go ahead and head over to the next slide. Oh, that's me, sorry. I have the power. I might have skipped one up, whatever. All right, so in between there and there, I worked at EA for a bit. Is it? Oh, okay, no, I don't normally talk about this one, but I forgot I left in here. So I decided to make a VR game. I had a business partner, 50-50, and I learned a lot about teams and fundraising, and the game failed. The game just failed. I took a bunch of money from an uncle, actually, and was hoping it would be successful, and we just lost the money, and it felt terrible. It was really, really hard. Coming off of Black Sea Odyssey, coming to this, and I was like honestly, I was depressed. I was like, damn, what am I gonna do? I just lost my uncle's money, and like I thought this game was gonna be big, and my co-founder and I just couldn't get along. It really sucked. So I, took a job at EA. I was definitely overworked and underappreciated, if I'm being honest. I can see why people stay there. It is sort of comfortable, like they take pretty good care of you. It's good health benefits, et cetera, but I worked my ass off over there. I was actually they had this like leaderboard to see how many points you did, like Jira tasks per sprint, and I was like on the top of the leaderboard every week for months. But like one day, all of a sudden I got laid off, and I was like, what the, are you kidding me? Like I'm killing it over here. So yeah, I was like, I'm not doing that again. So I started Cyber Dream. After my last sort of failure in VR, I said, you know what? I'm gonna do this myself this time. I don't want a co-founder. I'm just gonna build a company myself. And I was like, you know what? And not only that, I'm gonna make the world's first virtual reality battle royale. And this was also, by the way, before Fortnite was popular. This was like when PUBG first came out, and I was like, I think battle royales are gonna be huge, and I was right. The problem was, it's a lot harder game to make than I realized. So can we play that first YouTube video? Which, by the way, you can't even find this thing online, thank God, because this is a terrible video.
Get renter's insurance you actually understand. Get Lemonade.
Yeah, not that one. actually faked the whole thing. I read this article about how like you want to work on your game before you build the game, and this whole crazy thing. None of this is just like a pre-scripted story. AI is put out already. It's all fake. So I just did all this to make it fun in the game. And what I will say though is I got a decent publishing team, which is insane. It was enough to like feed myself and hire a couple people. So let's go to the next slide. Or I guess go back and then I'll go to the next slide. Yeah. So I kept making the game, but about a year in, I realized there's no way, like the amount of money I got from the publishing deal, that I was going to actually be able to ship this game. And I was like, well, I'm not going to give up. What am I going to do? And so Orlando, as you all probably know, is huge for simulation entertainment. And so I began building a contract house that built content for simulation entertainment. So I got really good with Unity and Unreal by that time, right? And I knew a lot of developers, knew a lot of students and other folks, and I just started going to these conventions and saying, hey, do you guys need extra help? A year and a half later, I've got a 20-person team, and we're building stuff for Universal Studios, Dave & Buster's, NASA, Lockheed Martin. Not directly in a lot of cases, a lot of times indirectly, subcontracting. If you know the contracting world, you know how that works. And like we had a real team, we were building real stuff. And yeah, it was awesome. We were actually making really good money. It was pretty cool. That was a ton of work. Now there were some months where I literally was borrowing money from my mom, and long story, but eventually we got very profitable. We're doing really well. And then we released our game. Can we play that trailer there? No. This is about 5 years. I'm already 10 years into my career, right? And I had learned a lot about making video games, fundraising, a lot of failures. I graduated in 2015. By the time that video came out, it was probably 2022. And I didn't do this to make small indie games, mediocre games, right? I started this because I want to make games that revolutionize the industry, that change the industry, that push the needle forward. But I knew that when I started my career, there's no way I was going to do that, right? I just didn't know enough. Wasn't confident enough. I didn't have the skills yet. But by the time I shipped Virtual Battlegrounds, one of the best-selling VR games, I was like, look, I can assemble a team and do this for real. I can go after the big dogs and create something that's going to really revolutionize the industry. So if you, actually, if you click the bottom link, I started Avalon. So founded Avalon, that was 2022. I reached out to one of the founders of EverQuest. His name's Jeff Butler. Pitched him Avalon. Midway through the pitch, he interrupts me. He stops me, and he goes, and he pitches me the rest of the game. I'm like, how'd you know about the game? Are you doing diligence or something? He's like, no, this is the game I've always wanted to make. Like, this is the nerd's dream game. And so we founded Avalon together. We raised $13 million in 2022, and we raised $10 million just a few weeks ago.
Hey, it's me!
$10 million in fundraising. We've got a team of people from World of Warcraft, Blizzard, Elden Ring, many AAA games, and we are building something that may just change the industry. So can we go ahead and play that video? Oh, the link doesn't work? Oh, dang it. Oh, you're looking for it? Thank you. Yeah, if you search Avalon MMO or, on YouTube, it should come up. So I can tell you a little bit about Avalon, I guess. It's a massive multiplayer online role-playing game with user-generated. Really.
A place where we can forge our reality. Where we can be anyone. Go anywhere. Do anything. A place where we can rise as heroes or reign as storytellers. where dreams are crafted and boundaries are blurred. A universe as limitless as our imaginations.
Freaking awesome. Normally not a school. So very excited for this to be real here soon. So cool. That's a bit about my story. I guess I'm happy to do questions. I could also kind of give some general advice for people trying to break into the industry, but maybe I think those will come as questions. So that's it for me. So yeah, thank you everybody. Yeah. Yeah, so we're about 25 people. Most of the team is very experienced. I would say around 5 to 20 years of experience. That being said, we are hiring some interns right now and some associate level positions, which is part of the reason why I'm here. I feel like we've got a really good base now for our team. We're also about maybe 40 or 50 with contractors. We are, I would say, modestly sized for the project scope that we're building. We intend, I mean, look, again, I didn't get into this to just make another modestly successful game, right? I want to revolutionize the industry. And when I think about that, I think about companies like Blizzard as it was 10, 15 years ago, Bethesda as it is today, and CD Projekt Red, and that's where we ultimately want to go. So for us, we're still very early. We want to be a 500-person studio one day. So we are also a remote-based company. I am Orlando-based. I do have a number of Orlando-based employees, but we have team members primarily in North America and Canada, but we've got team members in Europe as well. We're releasing a early access, like an invite early access later this year. Yeah. Great. Feel free. Any questions?
What kind of internship and associate level positions are open?
So we're hiring a level designers, technical animator, VFX artist, 3D modeler, gameplay programmer, maybe a generalist game designer, but honestly, anybody that's interested, let me know. So we're hiring a lot of roles right now. Can't promise it'll all come from Dave's school, but we are hiring a lot of roles right now. Yeah. It's not all listed on our website because we haven't listed them yet. So if you go to our website, you won't find any of them there.
Hello? Hi. This is more of a personal question. When you started as a modder for StarCraft and Warcraft, did those technical skills apply for your kitten game? MySpace cam.
Not exactly. So, like I started as a modder, I was like literally 7 years old.
Yeah.
And on that platform, they had what's called the event editor, and it's like how you create game logic. But I will say this, I think subconsciously, I learned a lot about game design and about game logic from making games in this for all those years. And so I didn't realize it, but by the time I started getting deeper into programming, I'm like, wait, all of those things I've been doing actually apply logically to all this stuff. So I would say it did, but not directly, right? I had to learn like syntax and like how code really works. And like, I never wanted to be, this is kind of elaborating a little more. I know you didn't ask this part of it, but I never really wanted to be a game programmer. I wanted to be a game designer.
Yeah.
And I kind of like fell in love with controlling and creating worlds, and now I actually tried to hire a technical director on Avalon to be the, it's a very ambitious game, like I need someone who shipped 7 MMOs to be my technical director, right? And I hired one, and he like didn't do the job very well and had to fire him, and now I'm the technical director again, which has happened to me every single game I've tried to make. So yeah, I don't know, it just kind of happened, I guess.
Yeah. On a personal note, I also modded a lot in Warcraft 3 and StarCraft back when middle school for me also. So
awesome,
yeah,
man.
that's relatable.
Yeah, it definitely will translate.
So I know that you went 50 and 50 on that VR game that didn't do so well. What were some challenges that you faced when it came like working hand in hand with one other person on a project 50-50?
So I've done 4 or 5 businesses now. The Black Sea Odyssey one was a success. It was a 3-person business. That one was a 2-person business. And I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs. a lot of entrepreneurs. I know pretty big entrepreneurial community in Orlando and the greater United States. I say this sort of with a caveat. I would almost never go 50-50 in with someone. I think it's a really bad start of your business. And if you do, you absolutely cannot. And this is the mistake I made. You don't partner with yourself. You don't partner with someone who has the same set of skills that you do. It needs to be somebody that's doing something very different, and there's a very different set of skills. If you're doing another, like you and another programmer, like that's a recipe for disaster in my opinion. Now it can work. I don't want to say it's a blanket case, but I can tell you every time I've seen it fail. I would advise that there's somebody that has more control, or you have a third person, would be my advice. Now again, this isn't like judge, jury, and executioner here. I'm sure there's great examples of two people working successfully, but again, I've seen it fail. And a friend of mine actually, I don't know if it's fair for me to say who it is, but he's a very influential leader here in Orlando. His business just failed for that reason. You probably know who it is. I'm not going to say his name, but his business just failed because of his 50-50 partnership. Just did not work out.
Can you talk about the pipeline that you're using at Avalon?
Yeah, like the development pipeline?
Yeah, like the tools.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of tools. So first thing, ironically, version controls. You have to use version control, right? You guys are all using version control, I assume. So Perforce is kind of the gold standard for Unreal, but we use Unity version control, which is Plastic SCM.
Plastic, yeah.
Yeah, Plastic. Ironically, I think Plastic is the best version control software in the industry. The problem is that Unity owns it now, and it's kind of a weird thing, but it's just better, to be honest, and so we use it. But you can use Perforce. It's the gold standard. Most companies use Perforce, use Unreal. I've used Git. Git can be good, but it's very like engineering heavy. Anyway, we use Writer for our IDE, but you can use Visual Studio. Visual Studio is fine. Writer's we think just a little better. It's just more expensive. It's a little bit better IntelliSense and other things. For 3D modeling, Maya, ZBrush. I'm not a 3D modeler. There's some other Substance, Houdini a little bit. I think there's some other things. Obviously, working on Unreal. It's most of what comes to mind. So we have I can get into like our version control workflow process. It's a little deep, but yeah. We use some automation tools as well, Jenkins for build automations and other things, yeah.
So how were you gauging your expectations of sales versus like what you were making in each project?
Ironically, we sort of set off to achieve the minimum goal that we wanted except the game that failed. For each of them, on Black Sea Odyssey, it was like, hey, we want to make a minimum of salary, but we're going to try and go rich. On Virtual Battlegrounds, I knew exactly the sales figure I had in my head was 50,000 units. I want to sell 50,000 units. And like honestly, I only ever wanted to sell 50,000 units because I didn't love that game. I just like wanted to. I thought I'd like make it like a year and be done with it and go make this game. And it took me 5. And then we hit 50,000 units, yay! But like 5 years of work, 50,000 units, So but we made money from other places too. So yeah, go ahead.
So with Avalon, it looks like it's going to be a really wide-ranging game, go into a fantasy world, cyberpunk world, all that. How do you keep a consistency with something like that? Because they're like completely different feeling games in a way. So is it going to be more like Roblox, where the game itself is like a game engine that people can go in and make their own experiences in, or is there supposed to be like a consistent through line with all of it?
It's a great question. So I would say it's one of the trade-offs we decided early was we're not building a game engine, we're building a game where people can create on top of it. And so what that means is, so there's like 2 different consistencies we need to talk about. So the first is gameplay, game feel. And so when you're playing Avalon and you're swinging a sword, you're using our third-person character controller, right? And that character controller is consistent across universes. So if I'm swinging a great sword, it feels the same as I'm swinging a lightsaber. If I'm shooting a gun, it feels the same when that gun's a cyberpunk gun, or if I'm firing a bow, although with the bow there might be recoil and some other things, right? But generally it feels the same, so game feels persistent across worlds. And so what you're not doing, at least not yet in Avalon, is recreating new game controllers, right? So the other part of it's like visual aesthetic. This is kind of like a deeper conversation, but a part of it is this is major quality control. So whenever we create something, we're not letting our users upload content. We've created a cohesive style that feels the same from genre to genre, similar poly counts, similar visual like color palettes and visual aesthetics between world to world. So, yeah.
This one comes from the live stream on YouTube here. One of our alumni, Steph Douglas.
Cool.
She asks if you could tell your younger self anything or something when you were first entering the industry, what would it be?
That's a good question. for me, it might not be as relevant for everyone, and that's just to believe in yourself. Don't believe in yourself. Like if you believe you can do this, just stick with it. A lot of the challenges I've had in my career has been me questioning myself. Right? Like when I went into that partnership with that other person, did I really need that person? Could I have done this on my own, or could we have built this in a different way? Right? When I hired that technical director on Avalon that failed, could I have been the technical director? Right? And it turns out I could have in those cases, and it ended up costing me a lot. And I think that's really relevant, not just if you want to be an entrepreneur like I've been, but if you just want to make your way in the industry, right? You might not be ready today to get that job at X, Y, Z, your company, but you can grow those skills in order to get there. So.
Are you developing for any specific platform?
Yeah.
Are you developing for any specific platform, PC, Xbox?
Yeah, really Avalon is the dream for Avalon isn't like really we want to build the Oasis. That's really ultimately what we want to do, right? But one chunk at a time, right? MMO with user-generated content, we believe the UGC side of it with interconnectivity can eventually look something like an Oasis, but the term is really overused. And when we think about an Oasis, we think about extreme market penetration, and everyone needs access to it, right? So Avalon will be obviously on PC. We're going to go to consoles, Xbox, PlayStation. We're going to be deployed on mobile as well. Now, these will come in stages, but we'll also be deployed on web. The game runs on cloud rendering, so you can just load the game from a website. Eventually, obviously, I love VR. I'd love it to have like a deep VR integration, but not right now. Not for the short term. So.
Being somebody that was both an entrepreneur and then an employee and then back, what's your advice on going through that journey where you've kind of been on the side of having your own dream and vision, and then you go the job route where you're kind of following somebody else's?
Yeah, the thing about video games that's so hard is like it's not like a lot of this. So we kind of got deep into the Silicon Valley culture a little bit. A lot of our fundraising capital came from Silicon Valley, and a lot of people go right out of college and go start companies that are worth billions of dollars, right? But they're like building websites for, it's like I'm building a website for people to like deliver food. Like it's hard, but it's not like Call of Duty hard. Like 3 people can make that, right? That's not really the case with video games. Like video games, it's tons of work, tons of energy, tons of effort, and there's like decades of skill for some of these things, right? Like I'm not an animator. If I wanted to be an animator, I'd probably have to go back to school and spend the next 4 or 5 years being an animator. But your game's going to sell like crap if your animations look like crap, and I can't afford an animator, right? And so the problem with like starting a studio right out of school is you have overwhelmingly difficult odds. That you're up against like people that have been at this for decades, and you're trying to do a thing that usually takes very large teams, and so you need to be very specific with the scope of game you're going to make. And so the reason I said this is, I think for most people, it probably makes sense to get a job out of school rather than try and start a studio, because you can learn those skills on somebody else's dime, and then when you've got the credentials, you've been working in the industry for 10 years, you've got the friends, you've got the network, you can raise the amount of capital you need to actually be able to build a video game that can be successful. Now, the challenge is, if I'm being really candid with you, is you're all probably very hungry today. You might be willing to start companies today, but once you've been in the industry for 10 years, a lot of you are going to have families. You're going to be slowing down. It's a lot harder to transition into being an entrepreneur, moving from a nice, stable paycheck and great healthcare. So you got to really, really want to be an entrepreneur. I think for most people, the sacrifice, it is very real sacrifice. I've got 2 little girls. I'm married. I spend an hour a day with my family, that's it, an hour a day. And the rest of the time I'm working, or I'm doing just enough to take care of my body. I'm very stressed. I'm working constantly. And that's not sustainable for most people. So I don't know. I loved working. I think I would have loved working at EA if I had a better team and a better project. I think just for whatever reason just didn't work out with me. So I think this is a great opportunity for a lot of people. But for me, I just have that fire in me that I have to do my own thing. So.
So the other question I had was more about your company culture. So I did look on your website and social media and kind of read up on what you guys kind of present. startup environment during COVID with a manufacturing company, right? So the wave of it's getting better, we got funding, and then it going back down to, maxing out my credit card to going back through that. It was an interesting environment, and what I want to kind of understand about your company is what kind of people are you looking for when it comes to grit? What stage are you guys are at with the goals that you have and how you're operating today? Do you expect us to be at that point, where are you looking for people that are kind of at that same motivation you are for your company?
Yeah, so I mean, it's an interesting question. So there's two different parts. I'm talking about cultural and I'm talking about skill. And then, so culturally, I'm looking for people that are passionate about making video games. That's really what I care about most of all. Like, do you love making video games, or do you want to collect a paycheck, right? There's a lot of people that have been in the industry again for 10 years that just want to collect a paycheck, and we're not that company, right? Go get a job at, I'm going to say Amazon. Probably shouldn't online, but whatever. Pick Meta, pick your company. Not always the case. But if you want to make something you're passionate and you're excited about the project, we're a good place for that. We treat everybody respectfully. We don't care where the idea comes from. And the best idea always wins. Now, skill. Here's the reality. Right now, it's an employer's market, and I'm at the end of the day, like, yes, I care about people individually, and I do everything I can internally to take care of people. But the way we think about our company is it's a team. I'm going to hire the best person that's going to give us the most value for the dollar. So, right now there's a lot of interns out there looking for work, and if I get 50 resumes, I'm going to say which one's the best, plain and simple. And there's also a cultural fit for our company. So that's how that is. Now, where does that usually land? For an internship, it depends on the role. For artists, we're looking for people typically that have maybe not good enough skills, probably not good enough skills to match our artistic fidelity. Maybe they're 20 or 30% off, but they're close. If they're not close, then we don't even take the time to talk to them, right? It's got to be close. That's going to be the same for most other companies, right? If you're an artist, you have an art portfolio. I'm assuming most of you are artists. Your portfolio needs to be close to as good as the work that they do. If it's not, they're not going to talk to you, especially right now, right? For engineers, it's a little bit more difficult to get the interview. Well, not necessarily. Engineers always have a job as long as you're a good engineer. The hard part is you can't analyze an engineer based off their portfolio, right? Like, you have to talk to them. And so you have to get the interview. And if you're a good engineer, you'll get the job, right? And for an engineer, it's just about putting in the hours, putting in the reps. Like, how much code do I really know? How much of this stuff do I know? And it'll come off across an interview very quickly. For designers, I hope you know somebody that's your friend. Otherwise, you're not getting it. I'm kind of joking. If you're a level designer or a technical designer and you've got really great chops, we'd love to see your portfolio. And I've hired several into the industry, so it is pretty hard to get into the industry as a designer right away, but it can be done, and some people do it. So, yeah.
We have another one from the stream online here. Francisco asks, what would be the best advice for someone who wants to start their own studio?
Francisco. I know Francisco, but probably not him. Best advice for somebody who wants to start their own studio. Yeah. Wait a few years. No. That's actually what I said at the start, right? Like to be honest, like, you gotta really want it, guys. You gotta want it so bad. You gotta be willing to work 10 or 12 hours a day for the next 3 years minimum, and then you probably won't succeed, and then you'll have to do it again and again. If that's you, you should go start a studio. If it's not you, go get a job. That's probably the best advice I could give you. I will say this: I don't know where Francisco is at in his career, but if you're right out of college, what I just said is especially true. In which case, I'd say unless you're willing to work really hard for 3 years, maybe do okay, do it again. Now, I've seen people that just their first time it wins, but I'm telling you that is 1 in 100. So if you have that fire in you, I'd say go start a studio. Otherwise, go get a job somewhere. Now, if you've been in the industry for a little while, it's a little different. You have more leverage, right? You've been in the industry for 10 years, and you're let's say a lead designer at Epic Games, right? You could go raise, if you know how the venture capital works, you could get a couple of your friends, and you might be able to go raise $3, $4, $5 million and have a real studio, right? So for a lot of people, I say climb the corporate ladder and then start a studio. See if you still have it in you to do it. But if you're like me and you just need to do it, as long as you can say yes to the thing I just said, then yeah, go try it. Just keep in mind, it's going to be really hard. Don't try and do everything yourself. Like, understand that there's a huge world out there, tons of information. Pull that information in. It's the only way you're going to compete, because you're not competing against Orlando or Florida. You're competing against, like, literally the other best-selling games that I had that were VR Battle Royales. One was a team in Europe, and I was a little bit more successful than their game. And then the game that ended up destroying us eventually was when Meta released their VR Battle Royale, right? And so, like, that's what I'm competing against, guys in Seattle, and then a group in Europe. So that's who you're competing against when you're making games.
How do you find the passion and ability to keep working on VR as a medium? Like, I love VR. I've been in the VR community for like 7 years now. I had a DK2. And it's just like the top games, especially like shooters, like Pavlov has a max of like 500 to 1,000 people playing at one time, and that's like peak. And things like Contractor Showdown just came out, another battle royale, and they have maybe 300 players on. So when you want to do VR stuff, and as a medium, how do you keep yourself working when you could just do a screen game?
So firstly, I'll say, Pavlov as an example, the creator of that game probably made $20 million, so like he's doing okay. Contractors guys probably made $500,000 or $1 million, maybe a little more than that. At the time, we were about equal in sales. The Contractors in our game. Now, we stopped supporting First Battlegrounds like 2 years ago, so that's a dead game now. But so I don't make VR games anymore, just for the record. But for me, it's not so much about VR or not. So a couple things. So I'll say from a business decision, I chose VR for 2 reasons. Well, non-business. One, I just love the medium like you do. I think it's the future of gaming. I think it's still early, but I think it's the future of gaming. And then two, at the time, it's not anymore, but it was a very niche market, and I figured that I could, with my limited resources, make a game that stands out in that space. And so that's why I chose VR. But I think, the reason I get up in the morning and I put in the energy I do, and this is more like a personal, very personal thing, it's like, firstly, why do I do this in the first place, right? Like, why am I making video games? And for me, this is, again, a little personal. Back when I was in like my early 20s, I was like in a very sad space before I got into making video games. I was a different life. I was an amateur MMA fighter and a wrestler, and way different life. And I was like really just didn't like who I was. Looked in the mirror and was like, you're a shitty person. And I realized that I wanted to make people happy. And I kind of like thought back to my roots, like modding games in Warcraft, and like remembering all my friends coming over modding them, and I was like, that's what I want to do. Like I'm looking at the news every day, and I'm like, Jesus, this effed up world. Like I just want to make people happy. Can I just do that? And so that's my mission. That's my why. It's why I make video games. That's why I'm doing it. It's why I put the energy in, because I think about like all the people out there making happy that are playing my experiences. So that's it for me.
I think you touched on it when you were answering that question, but as someone that was making VR games while the technology was kind of early, and I know you also mentioned you were thinking about adding VR support to Avalon. What do you think the future of that technology is?
Oh man. Well, I think it's going to come in stages. I mean, there's a lot of opinions about VR in various ways. I mean, firstly, the HMDs are going to get better. We're going to have higher resolution, greater FOV, higher fidelity. One of the huge challenges with VR is the computing power needed, because you got to run 90 FPS and you got to render it twice. It's craziness. I think cloud rendering may end up being a thing, so we'll have really lightweight devices. I may know that this is already a thing being worked on. Very lightweight devices and very powerful GPUs, right, running the rendering down to the end. So that'll be pretty cool. But I think towards the end of our decade, it's going to start to really take off. But I think like the neural plugin stuff is where things get weird and scary to me. But I do think that that's coming for better or worse in the next couple of decades, and maybe we'll go now another layer in the Matrix. I don't know.
For Avalon, are you trying to get the feel of like EverQuest 2? No. What type of feel are you trying to get?
So I mean, don't get me wrong, I love EverQuest. I grew up playing EverQuest. It's the game, in my opinion. That and Ultima Online. I would say EverQuest in some ways more so. That really defined MMOs, right? WoW was literally just like, hey, look at how much money these guys are making. Let's copy that and then do it a little better, and that's what they did. But EverQuest is a very dated game. They did do some things really right. I think that the sort of sense of like realness that you get in that game, of authenticity, is something I like, and there's parts of that we're pulling from. But the game, there's like tab targeting. It's very like old school gameplay mechanics. The UI is atrocious. So there's a lot of things that are wrong about it. And so EQ Next, which is that was Jeff's baby. If you guys saw it, there is more inspiration from that. And Landmark, you guys can look into it. Unfortunately, that company folded. But we're looking at gameplay mechanics in games like Elden Ring. Like, how do we make like skill-based rolling and skill-based almost fighting game combat in an MMO environment, right? Which we've sort of got. There's still like issues with latency and things. And then how do we like make UGC super easy and super fun? So looking at games like Fortnite and Valheim and their building tools, and how do we make that even more accessible? And then how do we make game logic really easy to do? And then looking at Warcraft actually for that as an example, but then like gamifying a lot of it. So yeah.
Hi. I was wondering if you could give a little bit more insight as to the process of acquiring publishers for like a new studio.
Yeah. So again, it really depends on where you're at in your career. If you're a graduate, it's hard. It's really hard to get a publishing deal of any meaningful amount of cash. The best way though, if you're a recent graduate or in school, is to create a demo that's cool. Create a pitch deck, which is what we did on Black Sea Odyssey, and then send to them. Now, it's actually the second best way. I'll tell you the first best way in a second. But second best way is create a game demo, pitch it to them, and get the email list of all the publishers, email all of them, 10 of them will respond to you, and you might get $100,000 that way. Maybe 200 if you're lucky. Maybe a little more. I don't know. Depends how good the game is. The other way is, and this is the way that is the most successful, but it's by far the hardest to do. That's to demonstrate a market need with your product. And what do I mean by that? So this is what Dungeon Defenders did, and a number of other indie games did, and that is to make your game go viral, make your game idea go viral, right? Put it on TikTok. I don't care, whatever you youngins do. I'm just kidding. I'm getting old now, I guess. Reddit, YouTube, whatever, and make it go viral on there, right? Like a Devolver Digital will reach out to you, and they will give you a publishing deal. Like, you won't have to try; it'll just happen. Now, it's the hardest thing to do because creating viral content means creating really good-looking content better than everyone else. But the first thing, if you're not able to do that, would be to pitch directly to the publisher. Now, if you've been in the industry for a while, it's a little different. You can go the more venture capital route, longer conversation. You can raise more serious capital, and then you're pitching directly to venture capital, which is completely different, different style of pitching. And you can also pitch to publishers as well that way, but and you can raise more significant funds. I can get into that if anyone's curious.
Hi, I have two questions. One about the game itself, and one about being an artist in general. I did want to say I love that you mentioned Dungeon Defenders. That was one of my favorite games at the time, still is. Reading up on Avalon, I saw a lot of talk about AI-generated content alongside the UCG. What exactly in the game is AI going to be used for, and how are you using this in a way that is not just AI, but is a gameplay mechanic and helps further along the game itself?
Yeah, it's a good question. So AI and Avalon. We have a phrase here at Avalon, and that's that creating should feel like playing. And when we started the company, this whole AI thing was pretty nascent. Ultimately, I just wanted to make it easy for people to make content. And then AI just blew up, and we're like, holy crap, this is crazy stuff. How do we leverage this technology in a way so that we can create content easier ourselves in our studio, and then our players can create content more easily as well. And so, for starters, in our studio, and I'm sorry to say this for concept artists out there, we do concept art with AI. Right? We create tons and tons of concept art with AI, and we had 4 concept artists, and now we have 1, and that person does tons of AI and then does it manually. But that's not really the main thing of how we're using it in the game. Well, not at all. In the game, there's several technologies we're interested in. And so we're not an AI company ourselves, we're not building AI, but we're integrating AI. And so the first is technology called Dynamo. We've got dynamo.co, and they're character generation. And so what we're doing is we're creating 3D models that look amazing, like top quality, like think God of War, whatever. I'm gonna say this is biased, obviously, this is my game, but really awesome 3D character models. But we're creating like a human, and an orc, and an elf, and a dragonborn, and an android, and then we feed these all into Dynamo's tech, and then they'll generate different races for us. So like we have Africans and Chinese, et cetera, and so we can play as like a Chinese dwarf or a Chinese orc, right? And then all these things can mix and match. Like what if I'm part human, part dwarf, and part dragonborn? And now as a user, you can use these tools and just create tons of diverse characters. So we're gonna have like one of maybe the most extensive character creator I've ever seen in a video game. And not only that, because it's all AI, it's all technically the same topology, and this is getting a little tech nerdy, but the renderer sees it as one draw call. It's all the same topology. And so we can have hundreds, if not thousands, of these characters on the screen that are extremely high poly, rendered through nanoskeletal meshes that look amazing and are all custom, right? So that's the first example of AI. The second example is conversational models. We've all seen, ChatGPT at this point, I'm guessing. So there's a company called Emerald AI that's building specifically character conversational models, and it's incredible. Like these characters are almost human, and it's also natural language processing, text-to-speech that sounds very lifelike. We trained some of our own personal voices on it, and it literally sounds like me talking. It's weird. And so there's characters in the game that'll be your companions. Like I can train a companion, I can bring it with me. I don't have a cleric in my group. Oh, cool, I've got a cleric now, and they can talk to me. And not only that, I'm fighting a boss, and I'm talking crap to this boss. We actually have a boss in our game called Nukuya-chan, means butcher in Japanese. And it's a mech robot, and her job is to deliver you. She's a maid cafe robot, but she's like huge, has like big machine guns. And her job is to deliver you dishes of destruction. And she'll be like super mean to you while like trying to kill you, but you can like talk her out of killing you, right? Because of the conversational model built into her character, which is kind of interesting. So we want to create a more lifelike world with these conversational characters. I want to walk into a village and have 100 NPCs in there, all with unique personalities I can build relationships with. They're multi-model, so like if I'm in a group with my friend and my friend doesn't get along with the innkeep, like maybe the innkeep won't service, right? So some really interesting things there. And then the last one is not something we're doing right now, but I think is very interesting, and that's behavioral models. So currently, the best players in the world in video games are actually not players, they're AI. This is true in Minecraft, it's true in StarCraft, it's very true in chess, and if it's not true in pick your game, it probably can be if we have an adversarial network model trained on it. And so it's very interesting to us, the idea of like having AI in our games start kicking your butt, not because they have way better stats than you, but because they're actually better at the game than you, right? And so we're thinking about how do we integrate these models into our game so that our players can create content with these models, right? Maybe this is a dwarf that's not very smart, and he's not very good at combat, right? But maybe he makes another one with the same stats. It's like, this guy's amazing at combat, and he's got low stats, but good luck trying to kill him, right? So that's sort of some of the fun things we're thinking about.
Yeah. That sounds awesome, first of all. The use of AI sounds great. My second question was going to be, as an artist, I use my art as a platform to challenge perspective. Not necessarily to put controversy out there, but to give people a way to see objects, worlds, anything in another perspective, which I think is what games as a medium does, is it gives you a perspective into a world or multiple worlds. Do you think there are any specific perspectives or notions that your game challenges?
Interesting. So yeah, I mean, this is, I'm not sure if I'm directly answering your question, but part of the theme of Avalon is that Avalon is a simulation. And so when you go in to play the game, I'm not sure if you guys have seen Isekais, but you actually start playing the game in like a modern environment, and then you get sucked into another world. And so you come to learn that all of these characters that live in these worlds, they believe they're real. They believe these worlds are real, right? And you come to learn that maybe some of these AIs are actually people that have been trapped in this game for a long time. And so the perspective that we change is kind of the perspective on reality, right? Avalon starts to feel like another living, breathing world, right? And we actually want to break that fourth wall a little bit and have you question your own reality. But not sure that answers your question or not, but that is one of the things we think about. So, yeah, cool.
Hey again. Hello. So you really piqued my interest there with the ideas of a conversational and behavioral AI, and I would love to get into more conversation with that later. But I guess again, it's a question of consistency. How how do you think you're going to be able to control this AI so it doesn't do something wacky? Because I found that AI, even with stuff like ChatGPT, it kind of struggles with getting the idea of a plot, getting consistent.
So, the Enroll team is thinking specifically about how do you make AI for video games, right? If I just plugged ChatGPT into our game, like I'd be spending years designing, engineering and designing the right, questing system, that kind of thing. So Enroll's done a really good job. It's not 100% solved yet, being able to do things like build custom quests and custom directive. So you can give your AIs very specific goals. Like for example, let's say the innkeeper and the innkeeper's daughter was captured by a dragon, and they want to give you a quest to go save the daughter, right? And so you give them these goals and these outlines around that, and while they might not have a question mark above their head that says, "Hey, please save my daughter," good sir knight or ma'am knight, but you can have a conversation with them and then discover that information very quickly because that's their goal and that's their directive. And then when you return the daughter to them, you can have a quest trigger. So there's still a lot of, I think, manual work that has to be done if you want to curate your content. But we're building tools that kind of layer on top of Enrolled so that our players can build that more manual, direct approach for some of that content. Yeah.
We probably have time for one more, if anyone has one. All right.
My question is more about games or like keeping funding in games and microtransactions being more and more important in keeping a game alive, and how, I don't know if your game is planning to be free to play or whatever you're trying to do, but how do you balance having microtransactions and keeping your game possible to play without having microtransactions? Yeah, how do you like keep it from being pay to win?
So I don't know if you guys have Googled Avalon yet, but it's a Web3 game. This is an interesting question. So this is the only way to do it. The only way is to close off your economy. So if you're playing, so World of Warcraft right now is a pay to win game. EverQuest is a pay to win game. If you have trading in your game at all, it is a pay to win game. I don't care what the EULA says. If you like right now, there's like I think something like $500 million of illicit transactions on World of Warcraft like every quarter. Like if you have an open economy, it is a pay to win, whether or not you recognize it, right? And so the question really is like if you want to not have a pay to win game, then you just close off your economy, right? You make everything soulbound, you make everything specific to that person, and then you remove the pay to win component, right? For us, we're embracing the idea of an open economy. We're embracing the idea that players own their stuff, they can trade their stuff inside and outside of our ecosystem. And I don't like, you still have to design content, I think, ultimately that makes the game fun and compelling. I think where it really gets damaging is in PvP, and you have to balance around that. And I can say for us, when we're thinking about how we do PvP in Avalon, we don't want players to exploit the things that they purchase in that content, but it really just depends on the experience people make. Sometimes players, someone may create a battle royale that says, "Hey, bring in your best stuff," and you know what? The guy that's spending a ton of money building, buying a bunch of stuff is going to have the best stuff. But someone else might create a MOBA that says everyone comes in here at level 1, you all get the same stuff at level 1, you're going to play through this experience, and that game's a very balanced game, right? There's no pay to win mechanic there at all. So closing off your economy is the answer. No trading. If you want a fair and balanced game where nobody pay to win, no trading in your game. I don't know how to do it outside of that, to be honest with you. So.